In sustainability, we need data to develop strategies, to plan actions, and to report on progress. But very often, the data we get, if we can find some, resembles this chaotic situation, or is even not existent at all. And if we can find data, we have to collect it, we have to somehow sort it, and we somehow need to extract the most important information out of it. And often this happens in Excel. And then the question comes up whether a software solution can actually sort all this data, make it usable, and make our lives much easier. But by choosing a software, will we make the wrong decision? Will we lock in ourselves into one software type? And will it be better than Excel anyway? Yeah, I went down the rabbit hole of testing, exploring, and using different software solutions, and here's what I learned along the way. So what are the big questions if we want to use software? The first big question is, of course, is it easier and faster to use? Will it make my life easier? Then next question, will it lock me into one solution? So could I make the wrong decision and then be locked in for the next few years? Not good situation for me. Then is there possibilities for automation? So can I import, export data easily? How does it work? That was a big question for me. Is it easier to get the limited assurance for reports using the software? And then last but not least is the question of the costs for the software. But how did I decide in the first place which software to test? Well, I first asked around in my network which software solutions they were using, and I got some experiences secondhand and made a long list out of that. Then in the next phase, I asked the software solutions for a demo session. They all offer that. You get some introduction into the software guided through by one of the salespersons. And then I came to a short list. Everything which worked out well according to the demo went onto that short list. Then I set up my testing system. So what did I want to test? And I will go through all the topics one by one. And I set my preferences. And that can depend, of course. Not all companies have the same preferences. So I made my choices and I went through that. Then I did the actual testing of my shortlist of software solutions. For me, it was important to being able to test it. So all the software solutions that were not offering the test session for me just fell out of the system, because I need to see how can I use the software? How does it feel? Do I enjoy working with it? Because if I don't enjoy it, if it's always a chore to work with it, then I will not be happy in my job. And then after the testing, I came to a very short list. And for those software solutions, I arranged another Q&A session with the software providers. And then we went through a few questions and a lot of clarification could be done. Now looking at the different tasks where you could use a software for. Let me start with the double materiality assessment. A software here could help with the library of impacts, risks, and opportunities. So making my life easier if they already had a predefined library which I could choose from and adapt it. Then also for me important was to have some import options, because I had some IROs before and I wanted to import those into the system. And then, also if I was developing some new ones, is it easy to write it into the system? And then can I use the tool to make surveys or to use it within a workshop? Does it feel okay? Will others understand how to use it? And so on. And of course, how was the assessment done? Was it calculating the right way? I really had one tool which didn't, so it's always worth checking that. And of course, is there documentation of the process? Do they already have their method pre-documented? So that will make my life easier in the end. Now, looking at the differences for double materiality, for all the different categories that I wanted to look into, is it better to use the software tool, or can we also use Excel for that? For the ease of use and for fast use of the tools, I really liked if the software had some library included or was guiding me through the DMA. What I didn't like as much, I often had to do many clicks to assess one impact, risk, or opportunity. So that made it a bit lengthy to go through it click by click. For Excel, well, it's very easy to use, but I have to input everything by hand. So I have to think a lot. And if I don't have libraries of impact, risks, and opportunities, it's a bit more complicated or a bit more lengthy. Both of the tools don't have login. I can use it for 1 year and then use another tool next year. It doesn't matter. I can export usually all the results, and I can export everything included. I might not be able to import it to the next tool, but at least I have it as an Excel file or anything similar. There's also not much of an opportunity for automation. Let's jump to the next one. For the limited assurance, it's quite good to have a software tool because that has been pre-checked before, usually at least. And with Excel, you need to check with the company who does the limited assurance. For the cost, of course, the software might cost something. It saves in time for setting it up. Excel, I have no external costs, additional at least, but I have to do all the work by myself. Now coming to the next point that I wanted to use software for, and that was for collecting the data points. And here what I was looking for, does it have a good structure? Does it somehow guide me through everything? So which data do I need to report on? Then does it have good collaboration features? Will I be able to invite some co-workers, or will I be able to work together on different numbers? Yeah, I was checking these functions. And then, of course, does it have the complete overview? I did not see any issues with that topic at any of the software, so probably we can take out that one. Also important, is it adaptable? If I want to report some KPIs in a different metric because we do not have the same as included in the tool, or if I want to do some additional KPIs, is it possible to add that to the tool? And as well as for the DMA, double materiality, I want to have some sort of documentation of how the data was collected. Now looking at the differences between software tool and Excel, for ease of use, it's pre-structured in the software. In Excel, it's easy for me to use the software, but I need to set up everything by myself. Then, does the software lock me in? Somehow it does, because I want to collect the data and want to collect it year by year. And it's probably not always easy to export it and import it into a new software solution. So it's sort of locking in. Excel, of course, is not locking me in. Usually for most of the tools, I can import Excel files into the software. So that would be one of my preferences, to being able to import any Excel data. The software then for collecting data, some of them offer possibilities for automation. So I can, for example, connect it to other software that we are using within the company, for example, HR software or controlling software. It was not one of my highest preferences because it always takes time to connect those, and it wasn't the highest priority for me. In Excel, well, if you don't stick to Excel but go to Power BI, you can also include automation, which works pretty well. I've done that in the past, but it's a lot of work. For the assurance, of course, the software does offer the assurance possibilities. It's easier for external people to access the data. However, they need to be willing to access it. With Excel, it's easier to use, but it's not as safe in terms of overwriting. So one colleague could, for example, overwrite my data without me noticing it. So there's no tracking of changes like it is in the software. So here I would say software is in a bit of a plus. Money-wise, of course, the software is costing me something, but I'm probably saving quite some time because I don't have to set up everything by myself. For Excel, well, it's just the opposite. I need time to set it up, but I don't have external budget. So if I have a lot of time but no budget, probably Excel would be my choice. But if I can afford it to use the software, it's probably saving a lot of time. So data collection, I would say tendency to go for a software solution. Then looking into tracking solutions. So if I now have my data and I want to plan the actions, I want also tracking progress. Therefore, I just noted down the preferences that I have. It It needs to have detailed site information, so I need to be able to track information for each of the sites separately if I need that. It is pretty useful if it already includes a library of measures that I can include and the KPIs going with that. Makes it a bit easier, but that's not a must. Now coming to another topic, very big topic, and that's carbon accounting. Here I was testing the different scopes, of course, scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. How does it calculate those? Which databases does it use? And also, is there a possibility for automation? Then, if there is a good documentation of the processes and how it was calculated, that is also a big plus for the software. Now looking at the comparison between the software solution and Excel, for ease of use, it's a big plus for the software because it's pre-structured. It is even pre-filled with the database. For Excel, it's a nightmare to search for secondary data, for data to use as emission factors and so on. So that is a no for me. Does it log in? Of course, it does more log in the software because I want to have comparison over the years. In Excel, of course, I can always change. The software usually sometimes offers some automation. I even saw some solutions which included automatic AI-supported reading of energy bills and so on. That was quite handy. For Excel, it's quite complicated to do some automation. It's not impossible if we use Power BI again, but it's very complicated. Then the assurance for the software is much easier. I mean, for Excel, the externals would have to check basically every number input into the Excel. The software works much faster. It sure has some initial costs, but with the time I need to set up in Excel and all the insecurities that I have with the data, I would really not use Excel for carbon accounting. I would always use a software solution. When it comes to writing the report, I want to be guided through the whole process. I also enjoyed if there was specific AI support for writing the report, or if there was some text blocks that I could then adapt. That was also helpful. I would say with all the reports that are out now, it's probably also possible to do that with ChatGPT externally, but it makes some additional work. Then what I also enjoyed a lot is if there was good export possibilities, so I could format the report and then use it in Word or whatever and continue there, also adding some pictures and so on. How was the comparison between the software and Excel? For ease of use, of course, the software had a big plus because it is pre-structured, and in Excel, well, it's basically only for collecting data. It's not for writing the report. I need to do that somewhere else. The software does somehow lock me in, not so much for writing the report as for the data, but then I probably wouldn't change the software for writing the report. For Excel, of course, it doesn't lock me in. It's really for collecting data. The software offered some automation for writing the report. So according to my data, some of the software solutions even made some suggestions for the text for the report. That was quite handy. Excel, of course, doesn't do that. For the limited assurance, it's much easier with the software to get that done. With Excel, well, I need to write it anyway somewhere else. And of course, the software was time-saving for writing the report because I had the pre-structure in there. So what is my final thought of using software or using Excel? To be honest, I would use software at least for carbon accounting. I would say that's not good using Excel for that. It will help to sort this, and it will also help to make use of the data. Then what I also like is using the software for collecting data and for tracking progress. Writing the report, it's a bit of mixed. Probably if it doesn't cost too much to edit, I would always edit, depending on the cost, I would say. Double materiality can be done with any software. I would not say that it needs to be the same software as for the rest of data collection and report writing and so on. And double materiality is probably the one that is the easiest to be done with Excel anyway, especially if you have access to a library of impacts, risks, and opportunities, or if you are good in finding these for your company. And if you want to know how to best collect the impacts, risks, and opportunities for your company, I would recommend you to watch this video where I explain it in detail.